The stars glittered like shards of broken glass in the dark expanse of space. A small human colony on the edge of the known galaxy floated in the cold void, peaceful and unaware of the doom approaching. The colony, known as Outpost Theta 7, was a quiet place, a mining station with a population of a few thousand. Life was simple there. Children played in the artificial parks under the glass domes, and miners returned from their long shifts covered in space dust, laughing and joking with one another. It started with a faint signal, a low-frequency pulse that swept through the communication grid of the colony like a ghostly whisper. The local defense officer, Lieutenant Harris, was the first to notice it. He leaned over his console, frowning at the unusual readings. It wasn't normal for a signal to appear out of nowhere, especially not this close to the colony's defense perimeter. "Commander, are you seeing this?" Harris called out. Commander Langley walked over, his boots clicking against the metal floor. He glanced at the readings. "Could be a glitch," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. The signal pulsed again, louder this time. A strange mechanical screech followed it, like metal grinding against metal. The lights in the control room flickered. Then the colony's automated defense system triggered, sounding an alarm across the outpost. "What the hell is happening?" Langley growled. Suddenly, the colony's long-range scanners lit up. Massive objects appeared on the radar, closing in fast. They were moving with precision, too organized for a random asteroid field or debris. Langley's eyes widened as the shapes resolved into sharp, angular forms. Cloaked ships, alien ships, massive, triangular vessels cutting through the blackness of space like predators stalking their prey. "Contact! Multiple vessels approaching," Harris shouted. "They're Zorith." Langley's blood ran cold. The Zorith Empire was supposed to be on the other side of the sector, licking their wounds after the last war. What were they doing here? And why now? "Activate shields," Langley ordered. "It's too late," Harris shouted. "They've already locked onto us." The colony's shields hummed to life, but before they could fully charge, beams of crimson light erupted from the Zorith ships. The energy blast slammed into the colony's outer hull, shattering the shield matrix in seconds. Explosions rocked the station. A section of the outer ring was torn apart, exposing it to the vacuum of space. Screams filled the comm channels as civilians were sucked into the cold void. Langley gritted his teeth. He opened a line to Central Command. "This is Outpost Theta 7. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack by Zorith ships. Immediate assistance required." Static. The transmission didn't go through. The Zorith ships were jamming their signals. "Commander, they're targeting the civilian quarters," Harris screamed. Langley's hands trembled as he watched the radar. Another wave of energy blasts streaked toward the colony. Bright flashes erupted across the station. Entire sections collapsed. Fires broke out along the structural supports. Life support systems began to fail. Langley's eyes darkened. He knew they were out of time. In a final act of desperation, Langley hit the emergency beacon, the last hope for survival. The beacon would transmit the colony's location and distress signal to any nearby human fleet. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance they had. Langley turned toward Harris. "Get to the escape pods. Evacuate whoever you can." "What about you?" Harris shouted. "I'm staying." Langley's voice was steady. He drew his sidearm and looked toward the viewport where the Zorith fleet hovered like vultures. His lips curled into a grim smile. "If they want to fight, I'll give them one." Outside the colony, the lead Zorith ship moved closer. Its dark hull pulsed with red light as it deployed a squadron of smaller attack drones. The drones swarmed toward the dying colony like a cloud of hungry locusts. Suddenly, Langley's comm crackled to life. A deep mechanical voice filled the control room. "Resistance is useless," the voice said. "Humans cannot stand against the Zorith Empire." Langley narrowed his eyes. "Watch us." The drones began their attack. Langley fired through the viewport with the station's emergency railguns, taking down 2 drones before they could strike. But it wasn't enough. More swarmed toward the colony. Langley braced for the impact. Just as the first wave of drones prepared to fire, the space beyond the colony erupted with blue light. A human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Dozens of warships, their hulls gleaming in the starlight, dropped into formation. A single massive battle cruiser led them, its hull etched with the emblem of the Terran Navy. At the helm of the battle cruiser stood Admiral Carter. "Hold your ground." Carter's voice rang out through the comm. "We've got you." Langley's breath caught in his throat. The Zoreth ships turned toward the incoming human fleet. Cloaking fields shimmered and collapsed as the Zoreth fleet powered up its weapons. Carter narrowed her eyes. "All ships, open fire." The human fleet launched a coordinated strike. Beams of white-hot plasma streaked through the void, slamming into the Zoreth ships. Explosions erupted across the enemy vessels as human ships moved in close for precision strikes. Langley watched, awestruck, as Carter's fleet tore through the Zoreth formation. The drones scattered. The lead Zoreth vessel's hull fractured, flames bursting from its side. The Zoreth fleet began to retreat. Carter's fleet chased them down, cutting them apart with relentless precision. The sky burned with the debris of destroyed ships. Langley stumbled toward the viewport, his legs weak. He opened a line to Carter's ship. "This is Commander Langley of Outpost Theta 7, he said. "Admiral Carter, you saved us." "We're not done yet," Carter replied. "Stand by for extraction." The Zoreth fleet's last remaining ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind nothing but wreckage and broken hulls. Langley sank to his knees, his breath ragged. Harris limped into the control room, clutching his side where a piece of shrapnel had cut him. "We made it," Harris whispered. Langley nodded, but his heart was heavy. He knew this was just the beginning. The Zoreth Empire wouldn't stop. They had declared war, and humanity would have to answer. Carter's fleet began recovery operations, pulling survivors from the wreckage. Medical teams rushed in to treat the wounded. Langley stood as Carter's ship docked. The Admiral stepped onto the deck, her eyes hard and calculating. Langley saluted her. "Thank you," he said. Carter nodded. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "The real fight is coming." Langley's gaze hardened. He knew she was right. The Zoreth had tested them. And now humanity had to strike back. The war had begun. The hangar bay of the TNS Valiant buzzed with activity. Mechanics in gray uniforms worked furiously, loading torpedoes into the launch tubes and checking the ship's shield integrity. Marines in black armor lined up along the walls, their visors down and rifles charged. The tension was thick in the air, the kind of quiet that comes just before the storm. Commander Langley stood on the elevated platform overlooking the hangar. His uniform was still torn from the attack on Outpost Theta 7, but he hadn't bothered to change. His eyes were sharp and focused, locked on the fleet status updates flashing across the display. Admiral Carter stood beside him, arms crossed. "They hit us hard," Langley said, his voice low. "Theta 7 was supposed to be secure." "It was," Carter replied, "until they adapted." Langley's jaw tightened. The Zoreth had never attacked human colonies directly before. Skirmishes along the border, yes, but a full-scale assault, that was new. That was dangerous. A low rumble vibrated through the hull of the ship as the Valiant moved into formation with the rest of the Terran fleet. Through the viewport, Langley could see the remains of the Zoreth ships floating in the void, broken hulls spinning slowly, illuminated by the cold light of nearby stars. Langley's comm earpiece buzzed. "Sir, incoming signal from the Zoreth fleet." "Patch it through," Carter ordered. A crackling sound filled the room before the screen lit up. A tall figure appeared, cold black eyes set in a face of dark scales. High Admiral Kesser of the Zoreth Empire. His long silver cloak draped over his broad shoulders, and the twin horns on his forehead caught the dim light. "You should have surrendered." Kesser's voice was deep and measured. It would have saved you from what comes next. Langley stepped forward. You attacked a civilian colony, he said coldly. You murdered innocent people. Kesser's expression didn't change. A necessary step. Your species has outgrown its place. The Zorath Empire has existed for millennia. You are but insects beneath our feet. You made a mistake, Carter said, her eyes flashing. You showed us your hand. Now it's our turn. Kesser's thin lips curled into a smile. So be it. The screen went dark. A deep alarm sounded through the Valiant. Enemy ships detected. Langley turned toward the viewport. Beyond the human fleet, the void shimmered. Points of red light flickered into existence, growing larger and larger. Dozens of Zorath warships dropped from hyperspace, positioning themselves in a tight attack formation. They're not backing down, Langley said. Neither are we, Carter replied. She turned toward the bridge crew. All ships, prepare to engage. Langley rushed toward the launch bay where the Marine strike team was assembling. His pulse quickened as he slid into his tactical armor, the powered plates locking into place with a mechanical hiss. His helmet's HUD blinked to life, showing ship positions, shield statuses, and targeting data. Commander, your team is ready, said Sergeant Bonner, his heavy-set frame clad in black armor. Bonner's scared face was partially hidden beneath his helmet. Orders. Langley steadied his breathing. We hit them hard and fast. We board the lead ship, disable their main command systems, and give the fleet a chance to tear them apart. Bonner's eyes flashed with grim determination. Yes, sir. The strike team loaded into the dropship. The metal walls hummed as the engines came online. Langley strapped himself into his seat as the bay doors opened. The cold void of space stretched out beyond them, filled with the crimson glow of enemy warships. Launch in 3, 2, 1. The dropship blasted out of the hangar, weaving between human and Zorath ships exchanging fire. Bright streaks of plasma shot past them. Human cruisers fired beams of blue-white energy, cutting through Zorath shields. Several Zorath vessels exploded in violent bursts of flame and debris. Incoming, Bonner shouted. The Zorath attack drone swerved toward them, plasma cannons charging. Langley's HUD locked onto it. He triggered the side-mounted missile launcher. A streak of light shot from the dropship and struck the drone dead center. It exploded in a flash of white fire. We're almost there, the pilot shouted. The lead Zorath ship loomed ahead, a massive triangular dreadnought, its hull bristling with weapon turrets and shield projectors. The dropship's landing thrusters fired as it latched onto the side of the dreadnought's hull. A bright red light lit the interior of the dropship. Go, go, go. The bay doors burst open. Langley led the charge, rifle raised as his team breached the ship's outer hull. Sparks flew as Bonner used a plasma cutter to slice through the inner door. The moment the metal parted, a volley of energy fire greeted them. Cover, Langley shouted. The Marines fanned out, returning fire. Langley rolled behind a bulkhead, popping up long enough to drop 2 Zorath soldiers with precise headshots. Bonner tossed a fragmentation charge down the hallway. The explosion ripped through the enemy line. Forward, Langley barked. They pushed through the corridor. The ship's red emergency lights pulsed, casting deep shadows along the walls. Langley's HUD showed the ship's core location just ahead. Take the control room, Langley ordered. We cut off their weapons systems and cripple their command structure. Bonner led the charge. They'd reached the control room door. Langley placed a breaching charge. Fire in the hole. The door blew inward. Langley and his team stormed through the smoke and flashing lights. Zorath officers spun toward them, weapons raised. Langley fired first, cutting down 2 of them before they could react. Bonner charged in, his shoulder slamming into another Zorath, crushing the alien's ribcage with the weight of his armor. Langley moved to the control panel, pulling off his glove and pressing his palm to the console. His armor's AI interface connected with the Zorath system. Lines of alien code scrolled across his HUD. Come on, Come on, Langley whispered. A burst of data flashed across his screen. The ship's weapons systems powered down. A low vibration shook the floor beneath them. "We've got control," Langley shouted. "Commander," Bonner called out. His voice was strained. Langley turned. Bonner was on his knees, clutching his side. A black Zorath blade was buried deep in his armor. The Zorath officer behind him twisted the blade and yanked it free. Bonner collapsed. "No," Langley screamed. He raised his rifle and fired. The Zorath officer's head exploded in a cloud of black blood. Langley dropped to Bonner's side, cradling his head. "Stay with me," Langley said, pressing his hand over the wound. Bonner's eyes flickered. "Did we win?" Langley's jaw clenched. "Yeah, we won." Bonner's hand went limp. His eyes closed. Langley's chest tightened. He forced himself to stand. The Zorath ship's systems were down. Human ships were closing in for the kill. "Commander," Carter's voice crackled through the comm. "We've got them on the run." Langley wiped the blood from his hands and lifted his rifle. "Then let's finish this." The Zorath fleet began to retreat, but Langley's eyes remained cold. He had lost men today. Good men. And the Zorath would pay for it. The first clash was over. The real war was about to begin. Langley sat alone in the dimly lit command room of the TNS Valiant. His face was illuminated by the soft blue glow of the holographic display in front of him. His hands were folded together, his elbows resting on his knees. The smell of burnt circuitry and sterilized metal still lingered in the air, a reminder of the brutal battle they had just survived. His body was sore, and the cuts beneath his armor still stung, but none of that compared to the weight sitting in his chest. Bonner was dead. Langley had replayed it a dozen times in his head. Bonner's body collapsing, his blood staining the deck, the last breath leaving his lips. He had fought alongside Bonner for years. They had saved each other's lives more times than Langley could count. But this time, Langley had failed. The door to the command room slid open with a soft hiss. Admiral Carter stepped inside, her eyes sharp as always, but the exhaustion in her posture was impossible to miss. She approached silently, sitting down across from Langley. "I've seen that look before," she said softly. Langley didn't lift his gaze. "He shouldn't have died." "We lost good people today," Carter replied. "And we'll lose more before this is over." Langley clenched his fists. "Bonner was the best. He saved my life more times than I deserved. And you think he wouldn't have done it again?" Carter leaned forward. He knew the risk. "We all do." Langley exhaled slowly. His jaw tightened. "This isn't over." "No," Carter agreed. "It's not." A sharp beep from the console drew their attention. Carter straightened as an incoming transmission flashed on the screen. Langley stood and tapped the display. The image of High Admiral Kessler appeared, his cold black eyes narrowing beneath his silver crown. "Congratulations, Commander Langley," Kessler said, his tone venomous. "You survived the first round." Langley's eyes hardened. "You'll wish we hadn't." Kessler's thin lips curled into a smile. "Do you think you've accomplished something?" He leaned closer to the camera. "You destroyed a few of our ships. You killed a few of our warriors. And for that you've earned my full attention." Langley's stomach tightened. "You made a mistake," Kessler continued. "The Zorath Empire has endured for millennia. No species, certainly not yours, has ever survived striking us." "Come and finish the job then," Langley growled. "Oh, I intend to," Kessler replied. His smile sharpened. "Your colony on Theta 7 was merely a message. Now, you'll understand the meaning of vengeance." The transmission cut out. Langley's hands curled into fists. "We need to move," Carter said immediately. "If Kessler is coming after us—" "He's not coming after us," Langley interrupted. His eyes darkened. "He's going after Earth." The ship's red alert siren blared through the corridor. Langley sprinted toward the bridge. Carter closed behind him. The main viewport showed the human fleet reorganizing. Fighters and cruisers were forming a defensive perimeter. "Commander," the comm officer called out. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Large fleet. Approaching fast." "Zorath," Langley barked. "Yes, sir." Langley's eyes narrowed. "How many?" 37 warships, including 3 dreadnoughts. Langley's breath quickened. 37 warships. That was an invasion fleet. The Zorath weren't playing games anymore. They were bringing the hammer down. "Commander," Carter said sharply, "we can't hold against that many ships. We don't have a choice." Langley turned toward the helm. "Raise shields. Power up main cannons. Prepare all squadrons for launch." "Sir." Langley's eyes narrowed on the growing cluster of red shapes on the display. The Zorath fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of hungry predators. Crimson light pulsed from their hulls as their weapon systems powered up. "They're targeting the flagship," Carter said. Langley's jaw tightened. "Then let's give them a fight." The Valiant shook as the first wave of plasma fire struck the shields. Energy crackled across the hull, but the shields held. "Return fire," Langley barked. Blue-white beams of energy shot from the human cruisers. They lanced through the darkness, striking the Zorath ships. A smaller frigate exploded in a burst of fire and debris. Enemy fighters incoming. Langley's HUD flashed red as dozens of Zorath attack drones closed in. Langley's helmet locked into place as he stepped into the launch bay. The strike team was already assembled, dozens of Marines and pilots in combat gear. "Suit up," Langley said. "We're going out." Langley climbed into his fighter. The canopy closed over him with a hiss. His HUD lit up as the engines roared to life. He launched from a hangar, falling into formation with the other fighters. "Target the lead dreadnought," Langley ordered. "Cut off the head of the snake." The squadron twisted through the firestorm. Enemy fighters swarmed toward them, plasma fire streaking through the blackness. Langley's fingers tightened on the controls. His targeting reticle locked onto an incoming fighter. He fired. A burst of missiles shot from his ship, exploding the Zorath fighter in a ball of fire. "This is suicide," one of the pilots shouted. "No," Langley said coldly. "This is revenge." Langley's ship closed on the dreadnought. Its hull bristled with gun turrets, each one firing red bursts of energy into the human formation. "Command," Langley called over the comm. "We need a breach." "Copy that, Commander," Carter's voice replied. "We're sending in the heavy guns." A pair of Terran battleships broke formation, their main cannons powering up. Bright beams of blue-white light surged through the void and struck the dreadnought's side. The shields flared, then flickered. "Shields are down. Hit them now," Langley shouted. Langley's squadron peeled toward the dreadnought. Missile lock indicators flashed across his HUD. Langley pressed the trigger. A stream of missiles shot toward the dreadnought's exposed side. Explosions rippled across the hull. The ship's structure trembled. "They're launching escape pods." Langley's eyes narrowed. He knew what that meant. "They're going critical," he said. The dreadnought's hull buckled. A massive explosion erupted from within, sending debris hurtling into space. Langley's ship vibrated as the shockwave passed over him. Direct hit. Langley's HUD flashed green as the Zorath formation collapsed. Some of the remaining warships began to retreat. "We've got them," Carter's voice said. Langley didn't smile. He couldn't. As his ship slowed, his gaze fixed on the debris field where the dreadnought had been. Bonner's face flashed in his mind. "This isn't over," Langley muttered. High Admiral Kessler wasn't dead. Not yet. And Langley would make sure the next shot counted. Langley stood at the edge of the observation deck, his hands resting on the cold steel railing. The stars beyond the reinforced glass window stretched endlessly, their cold light flickering through the vast emptiness of space. The aftershock of the battle still lingered in the air, the scent of scorched metal, the faint hum of damaged power conduits being repaired. The Valiant had survived, but just barely. Behind him, Admiral Carter's footsteps echoed through the silent deck. She stopped beside him, her reflection joining his in the glass. "We lost 472 personnel," she said quietly. Bonner would have been proud. Langley's jaw tightened. Bonner's name was like a knife in his chest. He should have been here. Carter's hand rested briefly on his shoulder before pulling away. "Kesser's fleet is retreating to the Zorith Prime sector. Our scouts are tracking them." Langley's eyes narrowed. "Why would they retreat?" "That's the problem," Carter said. "They're not running. They're regrouping." Langley's gaze darkened. He already knew what that meant. Kesser wasn't done. This was just the beginning. "Admiral," the comm officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "You need to see this." Langley and Carter exchanged a quick glance before hurrying toward the bridge. The crew was already at their stations when they arrived, the tension in the air palpable. The main view screen showed a blurred image of a large Zorith vessel, bigger than anything Langley had seen before. Its black surface was angular and spiked, glowing with eerie red energy veins that pulsed like a heartbeat. "What the hell is that?" Langley demanded. "That," Carter said grimly, "is the Warbringer, Kesser's flagship." Langley's breath quickened. "How long until it reaches firing range?" 6 hours, the tactical officer replied. Langley's fists clenched. "What's its armament?" "Long-range plasma cannons, gravity missiles, and some kind of energy-based shielding. Our weapons won't penetrate it." Langley's stomach twisted. The Valiant was fast and heavily armed, but it wasn't built to withstand a direct assault from a dreadnought like this. They'd be vaporized before they got close enough to do any real damage. "There's more," the officer added. "We intercepted a transmission." The screen shifted to a grainy, distorted recording. Kesser's face appeared, his expression cold and lifeless as ever. "You have taken lives from the Zorith Empire," Kesser said. "Now the debt will be paid. Earth will burn." Langley's blood ran cold. He turned to Carter. "We need to intercept them before they reach Earth. We have to go straight through the Zorith defensive line," Carter said. "And even if we did, the Warbringer would tear us apart." Langley's eyes narrowed. "Unless we use the cloak." Carter's brow furrowed. "The cloak hasn't been tested in combat. If it fails, we're dead anyway." Langley's jaw tightened. "We can't let Kesser reach Earth." Carter hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Get the crew ready." The ship's klaxons sounded as the crew prepared for the mission. Langley stepped into the armory, slipping into his combat suit. The dark plating felt heavier than usual, weighed down by the knowledge that they were heading straight into hell. Langley joined his squad in the briefing room. Their faces were hard, determined. They knew what was at stake. "We don't get a second shot at this," Langley said. "Kesser is betting that we'll sit back and defend Earth. He's not expecting us to hit him first." "We'll have to breach the dreadnought," Sergeant Hale said, "through the main hull." Langley shook his head. "No, too fortified. We're going through the engine core." Hale's eyes widened. "The core? That's suicide." "Maybe," Langley admitted, "but it's the only way." The ship jolted as it entered hyperspace. The view screen showed the Zorith fleet waiting beyond the jump point. Kesser's flagship loomed at the center of the formation, a dark leviathan surrounded by smaller cruisers and destroyers. "We're in range," the comm officer said. Langley took a breath. "Engage the cloak." The ship shuddered as the cloaking field activated. The external view shifted, the ship's surface rippling until it blended with the blackness of space. The Zorith ships drifted past, unaware. "We're clear," Carter said, heading toward the flagship. The Valiant slipped through the enemy lines. The shadow of the Warbringer darkened the viewport as they approached the massive dreadnought's underbelly. "We need to dock," Langley said. "Prepare the boarding team." Langley and his squad strapped into the assault pod. The countdown began. 5 seconds, the AI announced. 4, 3, 2. The pod launched. Langley's breath caught as the pod slammed into the dreadnought's hull. Explosive charges blew open the breach. Langley's HUD lit up with red markers as enemy signatures closed in. "Go!" Langley shouted. The squad poured into the breach, plasma rifles firing. Zorath soldiers rushed toward them, their black armor reflecting the dim red glow of the ship's interior. Langley fired, dropping 2 soldiers with clean headshots. "Push forward," Hale shouted. They fought their way toward the engine core. The hallway was narrow, the air hot from the heat of the ship's systems. Plasma fire struck the walls, sending sparks raining down. Langley's squad reached the core chamber. Massive plasma conduits pulsed with red energy. The control panel stood across the catwalk. "Set the charges," Langley ordered. Hale and the others rushed toward the panel. Langley covered them, firing at the advancing Zorath guards. "Commander," Carter's voice cut through the comm. "More Zorath ships incoming." Langley cursed. "Hale, how long?" 10 seconds. A Zorath soldier lunged at Langley. He slammed the butt of his rifle into the alien's face, then fired a point-blank shot into its chest. The alien's body hit the ground. "Charges are set," Hale shouted. Langley grabbed the detonator. His gaze hardened. "Kesser," he muttered. "See you in hell." He pressed the button. The engine core exploded. The ship trembled violently. Langley's squad sprinted toward the breach point as fire and debris filled the corridor. "Valiant, we're clear," Langley shouted. The ship's docking bay doors opened. Langley's team jumped, their jetpacks firing as they shot toward the Valiant. Langley's feet hit the deck hard. He turned as the Warbringer erupted in a massive fireball. The dreadnought's hull cracked apart. A chain reaction ripped through the ship, splitting it in half. The explosion sent shockwaves through the Zorath fleet. The remaining ships scattered, fleeing into hyperspace. Langley pulled off his helmet, breathing hard. Carter stepped toward him, a rare smile on her face. "You did it," she said. Langley shook his head. "No." His gaze darkened. "Kesser wasn't on that ship." Carter's smile faded. "This isn't over," Langley said. "Kesser's still out there. And when he shows his face," Carter said, "we'll be ready." Langley's gaze hardened as he watched the burning wreckage of the Warbringer drift through space. For the first time in a long while, hope stirred in his chest. Langley stood on the bridge of the Valiant, his eyes locked on the star-streaked view beyond the glass. The wreckage of Kesser's fleet drifted through space, like frozen carcasses, the remains of the Warbringer still glowing with the heat of destruction. But despite the victory, Langley couldn't shake the feeling of unfinished business. Kesser wasn't dead. They had struck down his flagship, but there had been no sign of him on board. Langley knew the Zorath warlord well enough to understand that Kesser wouldn't retreat quietly. He was planning something, a final, decisive move. Admiral Carter's voice cut through his thoughts. "We've intercepted a transmission." Langley turned toward her. Carter's face was tense, her lips pressed into a thin line. She nodded toward the tactical officer, who pulled up the message on the main screen. Kesser's image flickered to life. His pale, sharp features were framed by dark armor streaked with red lines of energy. His black eyes burned with cold rage. "You think you've won." Kesser's voice was low and cutting. "You have only delayed the inevitable. The Zorath Empire will rise from the ashes, and humanity will suffer for its arrogance. Your precious Earth will be the first to burn." Langley's jaw clenched. "Where is he?" "We traced the signal," the comm officer replied. "It originated from the Zorath homeworld, Zorath Prime." Carter's eyes widened. "That's deep within their territory." Langley's mind was already racing. "If we strike now, we can end this. If Kesser's on Zorath Prime, he's vulnerable." "Zorath Prime is heavily defended," Carter warned. "We'd need the entire fleet to have a chance of breaking through." Langley's gaze hardened. "We don't have time for that." Kesser's preparing something big. If we wait, it's over. Carter hesitated. If we fail, we won't. Langley's voice was steel. Carter's eyes searched his face. Then she nodded. Prepare the ship. The crew scrambled into action. Langley felt the Valiant shudder as it aligned for the jump. Langley strapped into his seat on the bridge, his hands tightening around the armrests. Jump in 5, the navigator announced. The ship lurched forward as it slipped into hyperspace. The stars blurred, stretching into thin lines of light. Langley's heart hammered in his chest. There would be no turning back after this. The ship dropped out of hyperspace near Zorath Prime. The planet loomed large on the view screen, a dark, storm-racked world wrapped in thick clouds of crimson and black. Massive orbital platforms circled the planet, bristling with weaponry. Zorath warships formed a blockade, their dark hulls glinting under the dim light of the planet's dying star. Enemy ships locking on, the tactical officer said. Activate the cloak, Langley ordered. The Valiant shimmered and vanished from sight. The ship slipped past the blockade, moving toward the planet's surface. We're coming in fast, Carter said. Brace for entry. The ship shuddered as it pierced the atmosphere. Flames licked at the hull as the shield strained under the pressure. Langley's breath quickened. Deploying drop pods, the tactical officer announced. Langley and his squad suited up in the armory. The combat suits hummed to life as the HUDs lit up. Langley checked his plasma rifle, the familiar weight grounding him. Commander, Hale said, we'll need to hit the central command center to reach Kesser. Langley nodded. We hit hard and fast. No hesitation. The drop pods locked into place. Langley climbed into his pod. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The pod launched. Langley's breath hitched as the pod slammed through the atmosphere. The ground rushed up to meet them. The pod's thrusters fired at the last moment, slowing their descent. The pod's doors burst open. Langley's squad poured out onto the dark surface of Zorath Prime. The landscape was barren and jagged, lit by the pale glow of the storm-filled sky. The ground trembled under their feet as distant explosions shook the horizon. Langley's HUD marked a path toward the command center. Move, Langley shouted. They sprinted through the darkened wasteland. Zorath soldiers emerged from the shadows, their weapons blazing. Langley dropped to one knee and fired. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, cutting down the nearest enemies. A Zorath guard lunged toward Hale. Langley spun, firing a clean shot through the alien's skull. The guard collapsed, smoke curling from the wound. They reached the command center's outer wall. The dark metal structure loomed over them, its surface crawling with red energy veins. Automated turrets hummed to life, swiveling toward them. Cover, Langley yelled. The squad ducked behind the jagged rocks as plasma fire rained down. Langley pulled a grenade from his belt and hurled it toward the nearest turret. The explosion sent a shockwave through the ground. Hale rushed toward the wall, planting charges along the base. Langley covered him, firing at the approaching Zorath guards. Charges set, Hale shouted. Fire in the hole. The charges detonated, blowing a breach in the wall. Langley's squad rushed through the smoke-filled gap. They entered a dark corridor lined with pulsating red lights. This way, Langley said. They followed the path toward the central chamber. Massive steel doors blocked their way. Langley planted a hand on the control panel. His suit's AI hacked into the system. The doors slid open. Kesser stood at the far end of the chamber. His dark armor shimmered under the crimson light. His black eyes glinted with cold amusement. You've come a long way, Kesser said. Langley raised his rifle. It ends here. Kesser's hands ignited with crackling red energy. No, it begins. Kesser unleashed a wave of energy. Langley dove aside as the floor exploded. His squad opened fire. Plasma bolts ricocheted off Kesser's energy shield. Langley fired at the shield's base. The shield flickered. Hale threw a grenade. The explosion cracked the shield. Langley charged. Kesser's eyes narrowed. He struck toward Langley with a blast of red energy. Langley's shield deflected the blast. Langley lunged, driving his combat knife into Kesser's side. Kesser roared in pain. Langley twisted the blade. Kesser slammed Langley back with a pulse of energy. Langley hit the ground hard. Kesser loomed over him. "You cannot kill me." Langley's gaze darkened. He activated the grenade in his hand. "Maybe not, but I can take you with me." Langley drove the grenade into Kesser's chest and pulled the pin. The explosion ripped through the chamber. Langley's visor darkened. He felt himself lifted by the shockwave. His body hit the floor. Through the smoke, he saw Kesser's twisted form crumbling to ash. Hale's hand grabbed Langley's arm. "Commander, we got to go." Langley stumbled to his feet. The chamber's walls were collapsing. They sprinted toward the exit. The squad reached the breach point. The extraction ship hovered nearby. They jumped aboard as the ground below split apart. The ship lifted into the storm-filled sky. Langley collapsed into a seat, breathing hard. Hale sat beside him. "Is it over?" Hale asked. Langley's gaze hardened. "It's over." The ship broke through the atmosphere. Zoreth Prime burned below them, the last remnants of Kesser's empire crumbling into dust. Langley closed his eyes. For the first time in a long while, the weight of war began to lift. Langley stood at the observation deck of the Valiant, gazing at the ruins of Zoreth Prime through the thick glass. The planet's once dark surface was now split and fractured, massive plumes of smoke and ash rising into the blackness of space. Fiery cracks spread across the surface like bleeding wounds. The aftermath of the final battle with Kesser had left the Zoreth Empire in shambles. The war was over. Kesser was dead, but Langley couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't truly the end. Behind him, Hale approached. "Sir." Langley didn't turn. "Report." Hale's expression was grave. "We've received word from High Command. The Zoreth Empire's remaining warlords are attempting to consolidate power. There's talk of retaliation." Langley's jaw tightened. "Of course there is." Hale hesitated. "They know Kesser is dead, but the Empire won't dissolve that easily. They'll want revenge." Langley exhaled sharply. "Let them come." Hale stepped closer. "We've won the war, sir. Shouldn't that mean something?" Langley finally turned toward Hale, his expression hard. "Victory doesn't mean peace. It means we've bought ourselves time. Nothing more." An alarm blared through the ship. Langley's communicator buzzed. "Commander," Carter's voice crackled over the line. "We have an incoming transmission. You need to see this." Langley and Hale strode toward the bridge. The crew was tense, their eyes fixed on the main screen. A Zoreth face flickered into view. The alien's pale, angular features were lined with fresh scars, his deep black eyes cold and calculating. "I am Warlord Kessin," the figure said. "You may have killed Kesser, but the Zoreth Empire does not die so easily. Your act of aggression will not go unpunished." Langley's fists clenched. "What's the demand?" Kessin's lips curled into a sneer. "Surrender your colonies. Withdraw your fleets from the Outer Rim. If you do not comply, we will reduce your homeworld to ash." Langley's glare hardened. "Try it." Kessin's face darkened. "You have 24 hours. The transmission cut out. Langley's knuckles whitened around the armrest. Hale leaned closer. "What are we going to do?" Langley's gaze darkened. "We're going to remind them why they fear humanity." Carter approached. "Sir, the fleet's in no condition for another battle. We've lost nearly 30% of our ships, and the ones that remain are damaged." Langley's gaze didn't waver. "Then we'll fight with what we have." Hale shook his head. "Sir, the crew. They knew what they signed up for," Langley said. "Prepare the fleet." The crew moved into action. Langley stood at the center of the bridge as the fleet aligned for the jump. His mind was calm. Cold. He knew exactly what had to be done. The Valiant jumped into hyperspace, leading the remaining human fleet toward the Zoreth stronghold. Stars blurred into thin lines of light. Langley's heart hammered steadily in his chest. "We're coming out of hyperspace," the navigator said. The ship dropped into real space near the Zoreth stronghold. Langley's eyes narrowed at the scene before him. Hundreds of Zoreth warships hovered in formation around a massive orbital station. The station bristled with weaponry, plasma cannons, missile launchers, and automated defense grids. It was a fortress. "They were ready for us," Hale muttered. "They underestimated us," Langley replied. "Enemy ships are locking on," the tactical officer said. "Shields up," Langley ordered. "All weapons online." Plasma bolts and missile trails filled the void of space as the Zoreth fleet opened fire. The Valiant shuddered under the impact, its shields flaring bright blue. "Return fire," Langley shouted. The Valiant's railguns roared to life, cutting through the nearest Zoreth ships. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield as the human fleet engaged. Smaller fighters weaved between the warships, exchanging rapid bursts of plasma fire. "We're outnumbered," Carter yelled. Langley's eyes burned with focus. "Send the signal." The tactical officer hesitated. "Sir." "Now." The officer activated the beacon. A low hum filled the bridge. Moments later, new energy signatures appeared on the scanners. Dozens of human ships dropped out of hyperspace, old Terran warships, civilian freighters modified for combat, even outdated colony ships with makeshift armor. They surged into the battlefield, weapons blazing. The outer colonies answered the call, Carter breathed. Langley's chest swelled with pride. Humanity had united. Now they would win. Kessen's voice crackled over the comms. "You think these scraps will save you?" Langley's gaze darkened. "They're not scraps. They're humanity." Langley targeted the Zoreth command ship. Full power to weapons. The Valiant's railguns charged with a low hum. The command ship's shields flickered under the assault. "They're breaking," Hale shouted. Langley's hand tightened around the console. "Finish it." The Valiant fired a concentrated burst. The command ship's hull buckled. A chain of explosions ripped through its length. The ship fractured, its core erupting in a blinding flash. Kessen's scream filled the comm before cutting out abruptly. The remaining Zoreth ships began to scatter. Plasma fire trailed after them as the human fleet chased them down. "Their line is collapsing," Carter said. Langley's expression was cold. "Don't let them escape." The fleet closed in, picking off the remaining Zoreth ships one by one. Explosions dotted the void as the last enemy ship was reduced to slag. Silence fell over the battlefield. Langley stood in the center of the bridge, his breath steady. His gaze swept across the wreckage of the Zoreth fleet. "We've won," Carter said softly. Langley's gaze didn't waver. "We survived." Hale stepped forward. "What now, sir?" Langley turned toward the observation window. The shattered remains of the Zoreth fleet drifted through space. Beyond them, the stars glittered cold and endless. "We rebuild," Langley said. "And we make sure they never forget." Hale's eyes darkened. "And if they come back?" Langley's gaze sharpened. "Then we remind them why they feared us in the first place." The human fleet reformed in the distance, their battered hulls glinting under the light of the nearest star. The cost had been high. Many lives had been lost. But humanity had endured. Langley's hands tightened behind his back. The Zoreth Empire was finished, but humanity's legacy, the legacy of fury, had only just begun.